Specifically the one that is seen in the individual in the black and white jacket.
Correct.
Mr. Henry, I'm not quite sure how your lawyers managed to do this, but I wish you good luck, sir.
Correct. New footage just dropped, and it's flipping the whole YNW Melly case upside down. What really went down that night isn't as simple as people thought before those tragic events that shocked everyone. Melly and Bortlen were caught on camera, and the streets are buzzing, saying this new footage changes everything. Let's break down the evidence that's got Melly in a tough spot. I'm about to show you why the prosecution feels they've got the upper hand on YNW Melly. After Bortlen's plea deal, the whole scene started whispering. Everybody's been digging deep into the state's evidence, and when you really look at it, you'll see exactly why Melly's legal team has been moving like their backs are up against the wall. Investigators came forward with 7 key pieces of evidence meant to prove Melly wasn't just a bystander. Each one aims to shut down that drive-by claim and place him right in the middle of the situation. But the biggest piece that's turning heads might just be that surveillance footage.
It was enough time for the heart to stop beating, for there to be no circulation due to the wounds that I examined from the medical examiner's office. None of the wounds have any blood in them, which tells me that they're all ante-mortem wounds.
At New Era recording studios, cameras reportedly caught Melly, Bortlen, Sack Chaser, and Juvie together around 4:09 a.m. on October 26, 2018. But it's not just that they were all rolling together, it's where they decided to stop that's got prosecutors fired up. During the trial, one of the victim's mothers had to watch that heartbreaking footage and identify her child. What a moment. That footage clearly shows Melly sliding into the left rear seat, the same exact spot where experts say the fatal shots were fired from. This one clip has everyone talking because it completely shakes up the whole story. The defense had been claiming that Melly wasn't even inside the car when his friends were hit, but that video's got his legal team looking tense. The forensic evidence is painting a picture that investigators say can't be twisted. They couldn't find anything showing that shots came from outside the vehicle.
My determination was that this is not a drive-by shooting. The shooter's at a stationary position when all but one of these rounds are going in.
No bullet holes on the passenger side where a real drive-by would have left clear marks. And things got even worse for the defense when experts pointed out that the driver's side window was shattered from the inside out, not the other way around. Crime scene reconstruction expert Sergeant Christopher Williams gave some intense testimony during that first trial that really turned heads. Investigators discovered 8 shell casings inside the car, coming from 2 different guns, a .40 and a .45. The trajectory analysis backed up the idea that all those shots came from the very spot where Melly was sitting, not from any random shooters outside. And the timing of those wounds made things look even more serious. Williams broke down how they figured out both victims were already gone before the scene was made to look like a drive-by.
That YNW Bortlen is not going to be a flipper, and he is not going to be the cheese eater I previously said that he could become. And he is going to give a statement. I don't know what that statement's going to be, but his attorney is an excellent attorney. He's one of my good friends and you know, really helped me out as a young attorney. Fred Haddad, a great guy. And he represented very, very few, if any, flippers in the past.
This new evidence suggested that Sack Chaser and Juvie were already gone before that so-called drive-by scene was staged with shots fired from outside the car. That's some cold, calculated planning right there. Melly's DNA was reportedly found all over the left rear door handle of the Jeep, showing he was definitely sitting in the same spot where investigators believe the shots came from. The defense tried to spin it, saying that just proved he had been in the car earlier. But when you line that up with the surveillance footage, it starts building a much clearer story for the prosecution. But what's crazy, though, is that investigators didn't find any gunshot residue on Melly, something his defense team keeps using to back up their claim that he never fired a weapon. But prosecutors aren't buying that explanation, arguing that the test was done too long after the incident for the results to hold weight.
Did you recognize the individual that got into the back seat on the left side, the rear driver's side?
Yes.
And who was that individual?
Jamel.
And Jamel, is that the defendant, Jamel Demons?
Yes, ma'am.
Then there's the tech evidence, and that's where things start getting really serious. Melly's phone data showed it was pinging right near the same area where everything went down, placing him exactly where he claimed he wasn't. Detective Mark Moretti took the stand and broke down those location pings in detail, and it didn't look good for the defense. But the most shocking part came from the digital side, an Instagram DM allegedly from Melly saying, "I did that after someone asked about the incident." If that message is legit, that's basically a digital confession through the gram. That studio surveillance video shows both Melly and Bortlen carrying bags when they left with the two victims. But when Bortlen pulled up to the hospital later, those bags were nowhere to be found. That's got everyone wondering what was inside them. Legal experts think those bags might have held the missing weapons that investigators still haven't recovered. That sounds like some serious cleanup work behind the scenes. Prosecutors spent time laying out a possible motive, trying to explain why Melly would allegedly turn on his own crew. Gang specialist Danny Polo testified that Melly had ties to a local set and that taking out Sack Chaser and Juvie could have boosted his reputation and even brought financial gain. Text messages between the group revealed major tension bubbling before the tragedy. Sack Chaser was reportedly frustrated, saying Melly was getting all the attention while he was the one putting in real work behind the scenes. Money and respect, two things that have caused more rifts in Tight Circle than anything else.
So theoretically, Phillips said Bortlen could now be called as a witness in Melly's upcoming trial. He could testify for Melly or against Melly. But my guess is if he's agreeing to do a proffer, he's going to snitch. I expect that to be the case, Phillips said. If they subpoena him, he can no longer take the Fifth Amendment on these issues.
The messages got especially heated when Sack Chasers started clashing with Melly's mom over some business issues in the area. Once family gets involved, emotions can spiral fast. The prosecution's theory is that after the shooting inside the car, Melly and Bortlen allegedly drove to another spot and fired shots into the vehicle from the outside to make it look like a drive-by. Blood spatter patterns and bullet paths didn't match up with what you'd normally see in a real drive-by. On top of that, there weren't any bullet holes on the right side of the vehicle, the side that would have been hit if someone had actually fired from another car. Things got even worse for the defense when both defendants showed up at the hospital. The way they moved raised major red flags. Security footage caught Bortlen switching up his clothes as soon as he got there, like he was trying to ditch anything that might tie him to the scene. Hospital workers later said Bortlen seemed nervous and kept changing his story about what happened that night. What made the whole situation even stranger was that Melly didn't show up at the hospital at all, even though those were supposedly his closest friends. If your people just got hurt, wouldn't you be right there trying to make sure they're okay?
So the preforms to me look like the 19th case as to the 2 counts of accessory after the fact, as well as to all 4 counts in the 23 case. These are going to be adjudication, 10 years Florida State Prison, followed by, that's a 6 years probation.
The most talked about part of the prosecution's case is how they're trying to use Melly's own lyrics against him. They want to bring up tracks like Murder on My Mind and a bunch of other songs as evidence of his mindset. At one point, prosecutors even tried to use more than 100 of his songs, but the question of whether lyrics can be used in court is still being fought out on appeal. There's also a promotional video that the prosecution is pushing to include, but that's tied up in appeals too. The whole debate over whether music and artistic expression can be used as legal evidence has become a huge topic in courtrooms across the country. Even with all that evidence, Melly's defense team says the case is built on shaky ground and investigative mistakes. They keep pointing to the missing gunshot residue on Melly, the unrecovered weapons, and reports of questionable police behavior during the investigation. The defense even brought up how Detective Mark Moretti admitted to threatening witnesses with deportation and jail time.
This is the actual crime scene on US 27 Pembroke Road.
And approximately where along Pembroke Road on this map were those casings discovered?
A revelation that's got everyone questioning just how reliable some of that testimony really is. But here's where things get wild. With Bortlen's plea deal now admitting that the victims lost their lives inside the car and that he helped cover it up, the defense's job just got a whole lot tougher. They can't push the drive-by story anymore, and they can't act like nothing happened. Now, their only shot is to prove that Melly wasn't the one who pulled the trigger, which is way harder when the rest of the evidence is pointing his direction. The streets have been waiting for the truth since 2018, and this new wave of evidence is exactly why prosecutors feel confident about their case. But evidence alone doesn't guarantee a win. Convincing the jury beyond a reasonable doubt, especially in a case this big, is a whole different challenge. And that's when Melly's defense team had to make one of their boldest, most desperate moves yet to save their client. As Melly's retrial approaches, his defense team is facing what can only be called a nightmare situation.
Specifically the one that is seen in the individual in the black and white jacket.
Correct.
Did Mr. Henry have possession of either of those satchels or man purses at the hospital?
No, ma'am.
With Bortlen's plea deal basically confirming the murders happened inside the vehicle and admitting he helped cover it up, the entire defense playbook had to be rewritten from scratch. What happened next exposed major cracks in both the prosecution and defense sides, showing just how chaotic this case really got behind the scenes. From the start, Melly's defense strategy stirred major controversy in the hip-hop world. During the 2023 trial, defense attorney David Howard pointed the finger straight at Bortlen, telling the jury that Bortlen was the one responsible. Howard said in court that those were Bortlen's lies, that he lied about where it happened, how it went down, and even about not having his phone. Social media went crazy after that co-defendant drama blew up. Comments were flooding in like YNW Melly and his defense tried to pin everything on Bortlen in the first trial, so technically they both talked. People were also saying,
this is huge, and this is one of the biggest nightmares that any prosecutor could face, where you're getting taken off the case and now being called as a witness in said case.
Remember how Melly's lawyer tried to paint YNW Bortlen as the shooter in his opening statement? There's no way Bortlen won't turn on him now. The internet was on fire with theories. The defense built their case around a few major arguments that had everyone split. Attorney David Howard stressed that Bortlen tested positive for gunshot residue, while Melly didn't, using that to argue that Bortlen was the one who actually fired the shots, not his client. They claimed that right there was the key proof showing Melly wasn't the shooter. The defense only brought one witness to the stand, Melly's longtime friend, Adrian aka A.D. Davis, who testified that Melly was at the house, sleeping, when everything went down. Davis said he found out about the tragedy at the same time as Melly, and that his boy was wearing just shorts and a t-shirt when they both got the news. That story was meant to show Melly couldn't have been at the scene.
So here's what happens. He goes and he testifies, or talks to the prosecutor in a proffer. His lawyer's there, the agents on the case are there, the prosecutor's there. They ask him whatever they want, right? And nothing he says can be held against him in that proffer. Nothing. And this is what they call a snitch session.
The defense also came hard at law enforcement, saying Detective Mark Moretti was fixated on Melly just because of his fame and his street reputation. They reminded the court that Moretti had even admitted to threatening witnesses with deportation and jail time, something that raised serious questions about just how fair the investigation really was. But the drama didn't stop there, because the prosecution ran into problems too. In a shocking twist, lead prosecutor Christine Bradley got kicked off the case after being accused of hiding evidence from the defense. The controversy centered around a police witness who allegedly asked another officer to lie about being present during a search warrant, and that's a huge deal. Legal analyst Melba Pearson broke it down, saying this revelation could seriously shake the foundation of the prosecution's case.
At the end of the day, Mr. Henry knows what happened. He was in the car, but he wasn't the shooter. And so finally, after all these years, for him to plead no contest, even though he was adjudicated guilty and accepted responsibility for this, in part, was favorable.
The defense pushed hard to have prosecutor Christine Bradley removed so they could call her as a witness to expose the detective who was accused of encouraging false statements. And it worked. Once she was taken off the case, it threw the prosecution into total chaos. New prosecutors had to jump in and learn 5 years worth of complex evidence and legal details, all with very little time before the retrial kicked off. Meanwhile, Melly's side was dealing with their own mess behind the scenes. In August 2025, Melly dropped his previous lawyers right in the middle of a prosecutor-led investigation into possible witness tampering. His new attorneys, Carrie Howard and Drew Finland, stepped into a situation that had gotten way more tangled after Bortlen's plea deal came out. Reports say Melly claimed the lawyer switch-up happened because of interference from the prosecution.
When pleading to an accessory to murder after the fact, you have to acknowledge that the murder happened and you assisted someone or in some way to cover the murder. Now, if Melly's statement is, how do we know there was a murder? And then secondly, how do we know who did the murder? Because they said it was a drive-by.
though the real reason behind that change is still unclear. Either way, with Bortlen no longer being a co-defendant, Melly's team lost one of their biggest advantages in court. Through all this legal back and forth, the families of Anthony Williams and Christopher Thomas Jr. have been waiting nearly 7 long years for justice. Attorney John M. Phillips, who represents Christopher Thomas Jr.'s family, has been handling both the criminal and civil sides of this case, and he recently spoke out about how the family feels regarding Bortlen's plea deal. The civil case adds a whole new twist because Bortlen's plea deal means he can't use the Fifth Amendment to stay silent during civil depositions. That opens the door for even more details to come out about what really happened on October 26, 2018. Details that could finally paint the full picture of that night. This entire case has pulled back the curtain on some deep tensions in hip-hop. Loyalty, fame, and street credibility all clashing in one of the most talked about trials in years. Public figures like Charleston White have been loud with criticism.
I hope they get his kid life. I hope he never gets out of prison. Yeah. He killed his friends.
Calling out how some fans keep backing certain artists no matter what's revealed in court. He's been saying the culture needs to take a hard look at how far people go to defend celebrities just because of their fame. Even after all these years of legal twists, strategy changes, and courtroom drama, the main evidence hasn't really changed.
You guys are so criminal-minded and caught up into this street culture where black people aren't even smart anymore. They think everybody dumb.
The surveillance footage still shows Melly getting into the same seat investigators say the shots came from. The ballistics evidence still doesn't match a drive-by story. What really changed isn't the evidence, it's the legal landscape around it. With Bortlen's plea deal now confirming that the victims lost their lives inside the car, the defense can't keep pushing the idea that no crime happened or that the drive-by story was real anymore. When your closest ally switches sides, things get messy fast. In the YNW's case, that's exactly what happened. September 9th, 2025 became a turning point in one of the most closely watched trials in recent hip-hop history. YNW Bortlen's plea deal had everyone talking. Fans, lawyers, and the entire internet couldn't believe what went down inside that Broward County courtroom. Even Judge Michael Usen looked stunned, telling Bortlen in court that he couldn't understand how his legal team managed to secure such a surprisingly light deal. This wasn't some ordinary plea deal either. We're talking about a man who'd been facing life in prison, or even worse, for 2 first-degree murder charges.
No. His attorney said no, he will not testify. The only thing that's going to happen based on what his attorney said is he only got to answer a couple questions from the state, and then he got to go serve his time. And
yet somehow, Bortlen walked away with just 10 years behind bars and another 6 years of probation. That's what a lot of people would call an unbelievable turnaround. For years, both Melly and Bortlen stood firm, maintaining their innocence and sticking to their story. Melly's first trial, back in 2023, ended in a deadlock. 9 jurors voted not guilty, while 3 said guilty. That split decision set the stage for a massive retrial, which was officially scheduled for January 2027. Then, September 9th hit, and everything flipped in an instant. The courtroom that day felt heavy, almost empty, with barely 8 people showing up to support Bortlen. Among them were Melly's mom and little brother, sitting quietly in the back. There was no sign of 100K track, and nobody from Juvie or Sack Chase's family showed up either. The whole vibe felt cold, like everyone had already moved on. The deal itself was simple but serious. Bortlen pled guilty to accessory after the fact and witness tampering.
Sir, lastly, and I want to make it very clear on the record, and it's unrelated to this negotiated change of plea, I guess at some point after the fact, the state wants to take a proffer from you or have a discussion with you, ask you some questions about whatever that may be. What I want you to understand, sir, is I guess that's part of this negotiated resolution, but your answers to any of those questions, whatever they might be, have no bearing on me and have no bearing on this negotiated resolution. In other words, the deal you've negotiated is the deal you've negotiated, and that's the ballgame.
While prosecutors dropped the original murder charges that could have landed him in prison for life. That's a major shift, and the reason people are calling this one of the most shocking plea deals the case has ever seen. But here's where things got even more intense. The plea deal included what's called a proffer agreement. That basically means the feds wanted Bortlen to sit down and talk, to share details that might help fill in the blanks about what really happened that night. Legal analyst Bruce Rivers explained that in plain terms, it means Bortlen agreed to an interview where he'd have to be completely honest about what he knew. The streets immediately lit up with talk about whether Bortlen was about to turn on Melly. Attorney John M. Phillips, who represents one of the victims' families, said Bortlen agreeing to speak could give prosecutors the missing pieces they've been searching for, the kind of info that could tighten the case against Melly for good.
Yeah, I think that it's important. And you know, this is a homicide case. This is a high stakes case. You want to ensure that there is integrity in the prosecution of this case because this family does deserve justice. And there isn't a person that deserves to be wrongfully convicted or in prison for something that they didn't do.
Bortlen's lawyer made it clear that the proffer agreement was limited. It didn't mean Bortlen would ever take the stand to testify against Melly, but the confusion on the streets was real. Some people were calling it straight-up betrayal, while others said it was just smart legal survival. Reporter Saidi Nash, who was actually inside the courtroom that day, gave everyone the real details about what went down. According to Nash's reporting, Bortlen's cooperation was supposed to be minimal and wasn't meant to put Melly in any direct danger. That went completely against what people online were saying, since early rumors had painted Bortlen as a full-blown informant. Once those courtroom facts came out, it was clear that social media had blown things way out of proportion.
There is a lack of any evidence whatsoever to support that a drive-by happened on Miramar Parkway.
Still, the timing of everything raised major questions. The day before, there were already around 250 potential jurors ready to show up, and both sides had spent a ton of money preparing for trial. So when Bortlen decided to take a plea deal at the very last minute, people couldn't help but think his legal team either panicked or that the prosecutors put an offer on the table that was just too good to turn down. But the wildest moment came right after the sentencing. The very next day, Bortlen got on the jail phone and dropped a freestyle. And that freestyle had the whole internet going crazy. In it, he basically addressed all the talk about snitching, saying in his own way that he didn't betray his people, even though he took a deal that had some folks doubting his loyalty.
So I had set this afternoon put the deadline as to whether or not Mr. Henry wanted to accept the state's offer or not.
Within just a few days, Bortlen was moved to state prison, where his appearance completely changed. They cut off his signature dreads and processed him into the system. Going from a rising rap star to an inmate is a reality check that can shake in anyone's world. It's the kind of moment that forces a person to see life from a whole new angle. But academics had a completely different take on what this plea deal really meant for Melly's case, and his breakdown had the whole hip-hop scene thinking hard. Academics pointed out something major that a lot of people missed. Even without Bortlen directly testifying, his plea deal basically confirms that the victims were killed inside the car and that he helped cover it up afterwards. That single admission could seriously weaken Melly's entire defense, which had been built around the drive-by story that both of them had stuck to since day one.
So, sir, again, before the agreement you made with the state, before the deal you made with the state, your maximum exposure here was life in Florida State Prison.
With that narrative now falling apart, Melly's legal team has to find a whole new way to fight back. Meanwhile, the hip-hop community is split right down the middle on how to see the situation. In a culture where breaking loyalty is seen as one of the biggest violations, fans and artists are debating whether Bortlen actually crossed that line or if he was just doing what he needed to survive. Charleston White, never one to stay quiet, jumped in with his own strong opinion. He gave a blunt take on the whole thing, calling out the double standards in street culture and reminding everyone that the code that people talk about doesn't always protect those who live by it. His words hit hard, and not everyone liked hearing that truth. Charleston White's perspective spoke for a big part of the community, the belief that if someone is truly guilty of turning on their own close friends, then fame, money, or street status shouldn't protect them from facing real consequences.
What if I look like taking a deal that hurt my... What if I look like giving a... About how y'all feel? I'm a young fly, be back to raising hell, prevail.
His words reflected a raw truth that many agreed with, even if it was hard to hear. This plea deal marked a major turning point in a case that's been grabbing attention since 2018, with Bortlen no longer listed as a co-defendant and possibly offering some level of cooperation to the prosecutors. Melly's defense team is now up against a completely different kind of challenge from the state. Melly's retrial has officially been pushed to January 2027, delayed because of ongoing appeals over what evidence can legally be used in court. The appeals court still has to decide whether prosecutors can use phone data, digital messages, and other tech-based evidence to show Melly's alleged motives, gang connections, and mindset before the incident. These delays are creating even more pressure for both sides. The new prosecutors have to go through years of records, thousands of pages of testimony, reports, and forensic findings from the first trial, all while trying to catch up fast. On the other hand, Melly's new defense lawyers have to rebuild their entire strategy from the ground up now that Bortlen's deal has changed the playing field. Despite all the twists, the reality remains the same. Melly is still facing 2 counts of first-degree murder and the possibility of the death penalty if convicted. Under Florida's new death penalty law, it now takes only 8 jurors, not all 12, to vote for that sentence.
All right, Mr. Henry, I'm not quite sure how your lawyers managed to do this, but I wish you good luck, sir.
The idea of justice in this case goes way deeper than courtroom rules. It cuts into how the community itself defines right and wrong. For the families of Anthony Williams and Christopher Thomas Jr., justice means finally seeing accountability for whoever took their loved ones away. They've been waiting years for closure, hoping that the truth comes out, no matter who it points to. For Melly supporters, justice means making sure an innocent man doesn't get punished for something he didn't do. They believe the system has to prove everything beyond a doubt before taking a young man's freedom or his life away. And for the wider community, justice means one thing: a fair trial that's based on real evidence, not on fame, emotions, or public opinion. Legal expert Safa Robinson-Ferrer emphasized how critical it is that this retrial is handled properly, saying every decision made here will set a precedent for future cases involving artists and high-profile defendants. This isn't just about one man. It's about how the justice system treats people in the spotlight versus everyone else. What's clear is that this case has already changed countless lives. 2 young men lost their lives on October 26, 2018. 2 families are still mourning. Bortlen is serving years in prison for admitting to helping cover up what happened. And Melly is still facing the most serious sentence possible if he's found guilty. The 2027 retrial is shaping up to look completely different from that intense 2023 proceeding that ended in a mistrial. But the biggest questions still hang heavy over the story. What really went down on October 26, 2018? Who was truly responsible for the events that took 2 young lives way too soon? And can the justice system finally bring peace to the families while making sure the right person is the one held accountable? All eyes are locked on January 2027, when YNW Melly will step back into court and face the moment that could decide his future once and for all. The stakes couldn't be higher, and the world will be watching to see how this plays out. If you want to stay updated on every twist in this wild case, make sure to hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and click the video on your screen for the next deep dive. You don't want to miss what's coming next.